Welcome back to the Fixed Ops Roundtable. Tom Kline is the industry authority on compliance. He has put together an A-list panel for today. I'll let him handle the introductions, but first, Tom, welcome back to the Fixed Ops Roundtable.
Thanks so much for having me, Ted. I'm super excited to be here with our all-star astronauts for All Systems Go. I couldn't have a better panel, so I'm really happy to be here.
I see that. You've got some amazing talent on here. I'm going to let you, Tom, handle the introductions. A lot going on in our industry. I know this will be captivating. I will come back in towards the end of the panel, and I'll see you all there. But everybody, you're in the very capable hands of Tom Kline. Tom, take it away. The show is yours.
Thanks, Ted. Welcome, everyone. I first want to start with just a quick introduction. Terry O'Loughlin, who's the Director of Compliance for Reynolds Reynolds. Sandy Zanino, who is the president of IAHR Consulting, Boyd Stough of Privacy Pillar, and Harsh Kaliwala of vComply. I hope I didn't butcher that, Harsh.
You did all right.
Okay, very good. Very good. Well, I have specific questions for each of you, but I want everyone to feel free to chime in after the answers. And Terry, I'm going to start with you. Director of Compliance for Reynolds Reynolds. And I want to start with what concerns are you hearing from dealers right now? What are you working on? You have a very unique background, which I want you to just take 30 seconds to 60 seconds and tell everyone about, including working at the Florida Attorney's General Office. So let me turn that over to you for a few minutes.
Sure. I have been with Reynolds Reynolds now for 19 years, and prior to that, I spent 16 years with Florida Attorney General's office. And with Reynolds, of course, I handle documents. I'm an attorney by training. I'm dating myself. I graduated from law school during the Carter era, and that I've worked with dealers for over 40 years, addressing their needs. And on the dark side, when the Attorney General's office, I investigated and prosecuted well over 100 dealers at least. Reynolds, I've been working on behalf of dealers to keep them compliant with all the needs of the transactions.
Understand. So a lot of dealers that I've spoken to have said to me, well, I can kind of let my hair down on compliance because, the current administration is going to not push the FTC, of which I push back and say the attorneys general, AG stands for almost governor, right? These are very politically motivated folks. Give us your perspective on what you think will happen over the next 4 years.
Yeah, there's a term from accounting that's commonly used called tone at the top. Well, tone at the top has changed drastically just within the past 3 months with the Trump administration. And what I think you've seen, we're sort of entering this phase of entropy, where there's this bipolarization. You've got the FTC and the CFPB that is now, they're totally different organizations. The FTC, of course, will continue to prosecute cases, but its rulemaking and its new regulatory activity, supervisory activities, they'll be strongly curtailed. The CFPB is even going to be further curtailed because it appears that it may not even be taking money from the Federal Reserve, where it gets 10% of the Federal Reserve's budget to spend. But here's what's happened with the polarization, the bipolarization. You have what's called DAGA and you've got RAGA. DAGA, Democratic Attorney General's Association, and RAGA, the Republican Attorney General's Association. And they almost created this two different universes where the enforcement activity by the members of DAGA will continue. They are going to continue to regulate. They're going to continue to promulgate new rules. The attorneys general, and attorneys general, by the way, is the plural. Attorneys, plural, general, because it's a compound noun like accounts receivable. That's where it comes from. The Republican attorneys general will probably be far less likely to engage in some of the rulemaking and work. However, both groups of attorneys general and the FTC and the CFPB to some degree will continue to prosecute cases. The reason is that they have that's their obligation at a minimum, because problems arise, problems are reported, consumers complain, there are misfeasance and malfeasance organizations. Unfortunately, sometimes in the dealer world, there are dealers and other organizations which engage in activities which are meretricious. And just as a footnote, there are 153 ways to defraud a consumer in a car transaction. Those kinds of behaviors will continue to be prosecuted. So anybody in the dealer community who thinks that there's not going to be any more activity is blindfolded. They really should pay attention. They should continue to pay attention, do the right things, follow the laws that existed. The good news is that there won't be as many new laws, but there will be some. But the old laws, they're not disappearing. Unfair and deceptive trade practices, where the minimum rule is anything that has a tendency or capacity to mislead a consumer is subject to prosecution. That's a very low bar, and attorneys general cannot ignore that. So dealers who wish to engage in these meretricious activities, they should not do so.
Yeah, you said a lot there. We could unpack that for about an hour, but the short version is enforcement's not going away. Be aware, the AGs are active, and right.
And if I may just, in this couple notes here, on January 10th, a group of 13 Democratic attorney generals wrote a letter to Walmart complaining that they're discontinuing their DEI programs. Well, on January 27th, 17 days later, a group of 19 Republican attorney generals complained to Costco that they were continuing their DEI programs. So you have this extremely divergent viewpoint. And then when you consider what's happened in California, they, within a few days left of their legislative session, Senate Bill 766, they're proposing their own CARS rule. So California wants to have their own CARS rule, and there are other states, once it begins in California, it's sort of like a progression to other states. That's so what you're going to see is some states are going to continue these activities. They're going to try to make up the shortfall of the disappearing CFPB, disappearing FTC. And we will see that in other states, it just won't be so. So if you're in Texas or Florida, it's probably less activity, but there'll still be prosecutions regardless.
Okay. Massachusetts just passed the CARS rule there, by the way.
Yes,
or something similar. All right, we're going to move on to Harsh. Harsh, your company, V-Comply, is a governance, risk, and compliance software company positioned across many different industries, including automotive. First, please share with the viewers what GRC software is and why they should care about it. And tell us what trends you're seeing from a compliance perspective across all industries.
Sure. So, our platform is designed to help organizations automate and streamline compliance processes. At its core, we help businesses stay aligned with internal policies, federal and state mandates, industry standards without, you drowning in spreadsheets and emails. So it gives you a better way to manage compliance and risk across the board and gives you more accountability. For auto dealerships specifically, compliance spans across a wide variety of areas: FTC safeguards, OSHA standards, advertising disclosures, F&I, and more. What V-Comply does is it helps you centralize these obligations into a single platform. It makes assigning of responsibilities easier, setting reminders, making sure that the right people are always in the loop, their escalation sent out. It provides real-time tracking and audit trails. And the end result is that you have a reduced risk of fines, you have enhanced accountability across the board, and it saves time for people running day-to-day operations. You get, on the top of all, you get peace of mind for the dealership owners, knowing that you're always ready for an audit or an inspection. So I think that's what the platform does from a GRC standpoint. I think in general, the trends I'm seeing in compliance across industries, there's a shift from reactive to proactive compliance today. Companies aren't waiting for violations or audits to act. They're investing in tools that build a culture of accountability from the ground up. And I think that's been sort of the biggest mindset shift over the last 5 years. Second, I think there's a growing demand for real-time visibility. So leaders want to know at any moment, where do risks exist in their business? whether it's a mistraining, a lapse in data security, or a vendor issue, and fix it before it escalates or becomes a major problem in the business. And lastly, I think with increasing complexity, especially around data privacy and cybersecurity, there's a need for solutions that are flexible, scalable, and industry agnostic. Even in traditional industries like automotive, digital transformation, I think, is driving the need for smarter compliance and risk management solutions where, there's enhanced transparency, everything is above board, and people are informed about what's happening from a risk and compliance standpoint.
Great. So again, we could probably spend an hour unpacking that as well. But what you're saying is that that business leaders are finding it very useful to have what I call the one throat to choke program, where they have one source of truth and they can go into your software or other softwares like it and find all the information they need on their risk and compliance programs. Is that correct?
Exactly. Yep.
And is HR part of a GRC software, Harsh?
HR is a big part of GRC software, right from your employee handbooks to internal trainings to policies and procedures that your employees need to sign in a desk. I mean, that's also something that's a part of risk and compliance and HR. So I think there's significant overlap there.
Very good. And we're going to, of course, Harsh and Terry, I'm setting up Sandy for last because we're getting little pieces of HR here and there. So I'm going to save Sandy for last. But for the moment, I'm going to bounce over to Boyd Stough. Boyd, who's a partner in Privacy Pillar, also an attorney. Take a minute, Boyd, please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about cookie consent, consent management, data subject access requests, and take a minute on that. And we'd like to hear about that because we all come from compliance in such different parts of it here, which is why I said these are all-star astronauts here on our All Systems Go program. So with that, Boyd, I'm gonna let you take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. I'm an attorney, barred in DC. I don't practice in the regular sense. I apply my experience as an attorney, obviously very much in this realm and some others in business. And my work with Privacy Pillar is very much focused on, let me start this way. A lot of the companies in this space that offer, let's say, cookie banners or cookie consent management, data subject access request management, or DSAR management, or PII management, we call it consent preference management, are selling technology, right? When what we should be doing is making sure that we are covering that aspect of compliance. We're actually making sure that our clients are in fact compliant, that their customers are respected, and that their business is protected. And so Privacy Pillar offers an awesome range of solutions. I'm biased, but I think they are the best out there, certainly the most robust. And we have a team of people that really takes the time to understand the business of the client and then educate them, because that's a huge part of this, right? People say, they come to you and they say they need it. Well, they don't really know what they need, and so you have to take the time to explain to them what these laws are, how they work, their responsibility with respect to those laws, and then of course how the technology, right, is applied to help them comply.
Let me interrupt you. Let me interrupt for 1 second, Boyd. Tell everyone, please, what is cookie consent
Sure.
management,
Yeah,
and DSAR?
absolutely.
I think that's important to.
Sure. So cookie consent is easily the most, we'll call the most popular, right? People are aware of this if they're just out there surfing the web. They're going to run across websites where there's a cookie banner in place on a website. You may not know why that's there. Well, across the board, these laws say that you have to provide every single consumer, right? If you check certain boxes with respect to given laws across different jurisdictions, especially the United States, then you have to inform the customer. You have to give them the opportunity to make an informed decision about what data they share and what tools they're allowing to be used to collect that information, right? And so cookies, not familiar with what cookies are. Everybody knows what a cookie is, even if you don't really know what a cookie is. You go shopping for a pair of shoes one day, and the next thing you know, you're out looking for flowers for your mom, and you're starting to get barraged by ads that are trying to sell you shoes, right? Well, a cookie did that, right? But cookies can also be used to optimize the website experience, all sorts of things, right? But effectively, what a cookie is doing is that it's saying, hey, based on you visiting this website and your behavior while you're here. Okay, it's learning about you. It's allowing in this case, the dealership to maybe customize the experience for you on the website, such that maybe next time you come, you don't have to jump through all the same hoops. Or it's going to retarget, right? They're going to try to sell you a truck when you're trying to find flowers for your mom, that kind of thing. So these laws say that you have to inform the consumer about what data you're collecting, how you're collecting, what tools you're using to do that. Now in the United States, you're automatically opted in. Okay, you don't need to take any specific action to allow for these things to be running. But you do have to take a specific action, be provided with an opportunity to take specific action to deny all or opt out of all. Or language is different. It can be on the banners, it could be different. But at the end of the day, you have to be provided with an opportunity, right? What they call that parity, opt in, opt out. And then you also have to be provided with an opportunity to manage your preferences. So if you're one of these people that wants to go the extra mile and you want to pick and choose which cookies you're going to allow to run, you've got to be afforded that opportunity. So that's what a cookie banner does. That's cookie consent. Now, PII consent, or consent preference management, these laws also say that for every instance of personally identifiable information, or PII, that somebody gives you, you have to collect and store consent. Okay, specific consent for that PII. And so that's what consent preference management does, right? It allows you to collect that and store that consent. And then these laws also say that that a consumer, or what's called a data subject, has the ability to write in to your company, your dealership, okay, and say, hey, what information do you have on me? I'd like you to change that information. I'd like you to delete that information, or I'd like you to export that information in a common file format. Now, what you need as a company is you need the ability to field those subject requests, those data subject access requests, or DSARs, and then in a timely manner, right? Depending on the law, you have a specific amount of time wherein you have to respond to that particular request. And so you need a solution in place that allows you to not only field those requests and then channel that request to the right person within the organization, but also something that's going to interface with the different third-party tools, right, that you're using, maybe your CRMs, et cetera, right, to see if that individual's information happens to exist in those databases, and if it does, to take the necessary action and then report that back to the consumer. So at a high level, that's the three solutions that cover the three different aspects of the consumer data privacy laws.
So it sounds like if you don't comply with this, it's going to be expensive.
Yeah, it could be very expensive. I mean, Honda just got fined $650,000 about. I don't know if it was a big deal. Everybody saw that.
How much was it?
It's about $650,000, which doesn't sound like a lot when you're talking about Honda or whatever. But at the end of the day, that particular case, Honda was collecting more information than they needed, right? These laws also say that you're restricted to the amount of the kind of information you're collecting and how you're using it, because it needs to be contextual. For instance, I'm an automotive dealership. I can only collect information that's going to facilitate the marketing of, the selling of, and the ownership support of a vehicle. Okay, I can't collect any information that's outside of those bounds, and I can't request information from you, right, that is more than is required by law to, for instance, opt out or to submit a DSAR request, which in the case of Honda, right, they made you jump through a bunch of hoops in order to opt out. Remember when we talk about parity, you've got to have an equal opportunity. They made you jump through a couple of hoops to do that. Now, if you submit a DSAR request, a third party can submit DSAR requests on your behalf. Okay, you're allowed to ask for evidence from the third party, but you're not allowed, in the case of Honda, to ask for the mailing address of the person that third party represents and then mail them directly up. So you're collecting information you don't need in order to facilitate that particular transaction. So these laws can be very expensive, running afoul of them can be terribly expensive, but complying with the laws is incredibly inexpensive. So
there you go. I like that. We all like that, don't we? Complying can be very inexpensive, and it's an investment. All right. Well, I'm gonna jump over to Sandy here for a minute, and then we'll come back. And I've got. I hope I have time for some more questions, because I'm so happy that you're all on here, because this is such a large brain trust. Everybody, I can see all the big brains here. So Sandy, we talked this morning. We talked today about 3 technology companies so far, and then we have good old-fashioned shoe leather, which is some things just need human interaction, and that's where you come in, is the human interaction. And so take a minute, please, and tell everyone what IA HR Consulting is and what you do. And then I want to jump into what Terry said. I'm sure Terry has more to add to talk about what the current administration is doing on DEI and what dealers should do with DEI. So take it away.
Okay, so Tom, thank you. Thank you for having me on. Short version, I fell in love with automotive in about 1998. I created HR departments in dealership, one dealership for just about 20 years. And then I opened my consulting business for HR and DEI. I just help dealers protect their profits, right? And I bring fun, humanity, and a little brightness into the boring stuff, right, of HR. So, because it doesn't have to be that way. So that's a short version. Do you want me to address the DEI?
Yeah, I mean, so we know the current administration is trying to dismantle DEI, as Terry said. From your perspective, how should dealers adapt to the current pressures to eliminate DEI, and is that the right thing to do?
So, one, thanks for this question, Tom. I think it's a really important question. And I think that eliminating DEI might be something that some should do. And maybe you weren't expecting that answer from me. I mean, I won DEI champions in automotive news. I have created a council for our industry for inclusion. I believe deeply in DEI, but I do think that if you went into DEI without a clear understanding of what it really is, just to kind of jump on the bandwagon and open a couple of ERGs to support your underrepresented groups,
let's try to stay away other than DEI. Please explain what an ERG is.
An employee resource group, right? You create a group like that supports an underrepresented group in your organization. So if you did it for those reasons, maybe you didn't, without a clear understanding of what DEI really is, maybe it's a good idea to kind of put the brakes.
Well, excuse me 1 second. Why don't you give us a clear understanding of what DEI is?
I will. I definitely will. Because if you're doing that, I do think you're doing it at your own peril, right? A better strategy might be to get a real understanding of what it is. And sometimes it's easier to say what it isn't. And I think a lot of the hoopla is that DEI is not merit-based, when that's really the opposite. You can ask any underrepresented person who in automotive, take a woman who's risen to a high level, and it's not about lowering the bar for knowledge, skills, aptitude. In fact, kind of like the opposite. Ask them if they haven't had to be 2 and 3 times as good as their counterpart, right? What they've had to do. So it's not about that. Understanding it in a minute, I couldn't give you the basics. What I would say is get some help in understanding what that is. In the end, I would focus on inclusion, because that is the glue. That is the glue. And that is the thing that I believe that in our industry, it's part of why we talk about our high turnover, our inability to attract emerging talent, and why the gender gap remains at 20%, sometimes even less. We've gone a little bit backwards. So it is also about your customers, because no matter what I would say is definitely get some help understanding on what it is, right? And go slow. DEI is not inherently illegal. It is not. Quotas are illegal, but you don't want to do that anyway. It's never been a part of what DEI is, because your customers, it is about your customers. It's about connecting with, retaining them, getting them, retaining them, your internal customers too, who are all of your employees, right? Because no matter what administration, right, the 4 years is going to pass, and your customers will be there waiting, diverse, and they'll just be waiting for you. So while I think that the short answer is some should get out, while trying to get a better understanding so that they don't run afoul and make silly mistakes. and some should dig deeper.
Terry, you have any comments on this?
Yeah, I think DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion is one of those issues that was made a strong issue with the CFPB, trying to shoehorn the concept of discrimination into the Unfair Deceptive Trade Practices Act. And that was, I don't think you'll see any of that activity now. As a matter of fact, I think it'll all be reversed regarding that. And the case of all these attorney generals from RAGA, Republican Attorney Generals Association, opposing DEI, I think what Sandy said is wise counsel. I don't think it's a priority on a federal level, nor is it on a state level. Unless you're in a democratically controlled state, possibly. But even there, I think that it's probably one of those approaches to employment law that may be seeing a sunset.
Go ahead, Sandy.
I just want to jump back in because I do want dealers and anybody watching to understand that the EEOC, which is, at the federal level, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, they have made it pretty clear in their latest announcements that have come out that employers do need to be careful. You do need to, I wouldn't, but I'm still going to say don't, for those who are in it for the right reasons, put brakes, but create a strategy, right? So I think that's really interesting what Terry just said too about the CFPB.
And when you say create a strategy, what do you mean? Are you talking about an inclusion strategy?
Yes, I mean dig into what that means. How do you begin to create an inclusive environment? And that's going to start with your leaders. What are the characteristics that your leaders need? What are the things that they need to learn? One is emotional intelligence, right? And just to give a little, impetus for people wanting to gain emotional intelligence. People who are emotionally intelligent make $30,000 more than people who are not, right? Mm-hmm. Then you have to learn the skills of emotional maturity, right? To understand what's going on around you, having your leaders, and this comes to a basic thing, and being able to frame decisions that you're making with your people, mostly, mm-hmm. right? With your employees and also with your customers, understanding what's going on around you and being able to respond effectively and create an environment where people, your customers and your employees will want to be and want to stay.
Sandy, how should a dealership or a business document that? How should they document all the things that you're talking about now?
Well, there should be a written plan, right? When you understand that there is a need for diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? Unless what you really want is the opposite of that. If you want uniformity, inequity, and exclusion, keep doing what you're doing. If you want to have diversity, equity, and inclusion, you should have a written plan. And that should begin with all of your leaders. And you should understand why. That should be written down. You should understand how you're tying that to your business. The first and most simple one is, does your staff reflect the area in which you operate, right? And there's no one that has that in terms of gender.
So
if I may add to what Sandy said, I think she said something that is really pertinent and significant. Put it in writing. Have a plan that's written. Have a plan that's updated. And that applies to not only the labor side of the business, employees and so forth, employee handbook, but a compliance program, a written compliance program, have a written complaint program, and have it documented. So if consumer complains, written account of that. And it's been my experience, when I investigated, prosecuted car dealers, any car dealer that at least made an effort to have something in writing, have something prepared, they had some evidence, some kind of defense. Some
Yes.
dealers don't have anything, and they are truly defenseless if they are ever subjected to some kind of investigation.
That's
You
right.
know-
So, Sandy, 1 second. Harsh, let me bounce that over to you. Tell me how a software like vComply can help with what Terry and Sandy are talking about in terms of, do you have a policy, and can that be distributed to all the employees? Can you take a minute and speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what vComply does is it helps you automate your policy distribution, right? From drafting that policy, having it in there, to being able to send it to your employees for reading and testing to the policy document. You also have functionality where you can get into the policy system and query a chatbot and get the answers that you need from that policy document. So it makes
Great.
it really easy for your employees to understand the policies and the procedures that you have in place.
Right. In which case, when a regulator comes in, you say, "Come on in, have a seat. Let me show you. Here's where all our information. It's all housed in the software. Let's talk. You want to talk about DEI? You want to talk about FTC buyer's guides? You want to talk? What would you like to talk about? Because it's all housed right here in this one place. Makes things super convenient and helps you sleep better at night." Sandy, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
You're fine. You're fine. One thing I think my biggest piece of advice for anybody really and any dealers is right now, if you don't already have a labor attorney on retainer, now is the time to do it, because you need somebody to be able to call. There are so many things going on, and dealers need to know what their rights are. And have somebody on the horn. I mean, I mentioned the EEOC, and the EEOC has come out, speaking of DEI, has come out with a fact sheet for what to do if you are a victim of illegal DEI. So
Right.
you need to have somebody on the horn.
Right. Okay. So
Yeah, if I may add to what she said, there's an association called the National Association of Dealer Counsel, NADC. There are about 700 attorneys all across the country that specialize in these areas, and a whole slew of them practice labor law, and they will certainly echo what Sandy just said.
Right. Okay. We're entering our speed round now. 30 seconds to kind of wrap things up here. What you see in the future, what dealers should be concerned about. Boyd, let's just start with you, and we'll go around the horn here. What should they pay attention to?
Pay attention to. I would say that you really do need to pay attention to all aspects of compliance, but in particular one that maybe doesn't get a lot of attention, which is consumer data privacy. And I would say, being an attorney, and very happy to throw attorneys under the bus, these laws were written so that you will read and you will disqualify yourself from complying with them. Ultimately, we're kind of moving towards probably federal legislation, where we're not just talking about, in order to overcome the enforcement issues of multi-jurisdiction laws, we're probably going to have a federal legislation, which is going to open up a right of private action. Probably is going to open up a right of private action, which means anybody will be able to take legal action. And when that happens, it's going to be, ADA compliance kind of grift times 1,000. It's really going to be a nightmare for folks, and it's such an easy thing to get ahead of. And then under the banner of respecting or even empathy or emotional intelligence, understand that if you can communicate to your consumers you do care about them and you do care about taking care of their data, that's the first signal that you're going to take care of them. And the last thing that I'll say really quick is this is one gap that I've noticed across the board is, even if you've got a cookie banner and you're happy with the company that's providing it, and you've got DSTAR to get everything else, make sure that you have somebody, a lawyer in your jurisdiction, who's helping you work through all of your vendor contracts, because your vendor contracts need to limit the use of the data that's being supplied to them for facilitation of certain functions and some functionality or whatever features of their different platforms. You have to explicitly limit their use, because if you don't, they use that information, they share that information, sell that information, and you're in trouble.
That was a little more than 30 seconds, but thank you.
Sorry about that.
Very succinct. Harsh, any final thoughts here?
I'd say focus on knowing what you don't know. I think, just keeping compliance overboard is super important. Keeping things transparent is super important. And it's only a risk if you don't know about it. So managing and proactively addressing it is important.
Okay, Sandy?
I would say Immigration is another focus. So you should
Definitely.
prepare for I-9 audits. You should do an internal audit right now. You should also know particularly if you're like in Texas or Florida, an area where there are many immigrants who have lost their legal right to work recently.
Right.
You should do an audit, and you should have that attorney to know what to
Totally
do.
agree. I-9 raids have started and are continuing. Terry, final thoughts.
Final thoughts. First, I think dealers should recognize they're perhaps the most regulated industry in the United States.
No question.
Item number one. Item number two, probably everybody on this panel could go into a car dealership and find some infraction of the law because the demands of this regulation is staggering. Consequently, every dealer should have a client's manager, someone who's watching out for them and can understand these issues and correct them as needed.
Absolutely. Well, I agree with that, right? Since that's what I do, I have to agree with you. Isn't that right, Ted?
Wow. What a panel, Tom Kline. So much information. I took a lot of notes, a lot of horsepower on here. And, Tom, I'm going to ask if you can come back and let's do this again at the next event. Because
absolutely.
Sandy, the information here is so important. And the way you folks brought it out from your different perspective, your different backgrounds, Boyd and Harsh, amazing information. And again, on a lot of topics. And Terry, this is top of mind, for dealers today. And if not, it certainly will open a lot of eyes and a lot of ears, what we heard today.
Absolutely.
Right.
Thanks everybody for being here today.
I want to thank the panel, Terry with Reynolds and Reynolds, Boyd for being with us today. Harsh, amazing information. Sandy, our good friend, thank you so much for coming back on the roundtable. Great to see you. And
great to be here. Thank you.
Congratulations, everything that's happening.
Yeah.
For you as well. And Tom Kline, if our audience wants to reach out for more information on what you do and how you help the dealer, what's the best way, Tom, to get a hold of you?
On the screen, you'll see my email address is there. I'll give you my cell phone number. Feel free to reach out. I do answer my phone. It's 757-434-7656. That's why on LinkedIn I've got a little red phone after my name because I actually do answer my phone. So just or go to my website and fill out the form, and I'll be happy to help.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Tom Kline and the all-star panel here with us today at the Fixed Ops Roundtable.
Thanks, Ted.